define provocative the way you use it. What's your objective when you write these columns?
Well, one thing I would say is, with the columns, as with everything I do on television, the opinions I espouse are sincerely held. It's what I genuinely feel.
That's clear.
I don't think you can be an authentic columnist.
No, you don't make stuff up. That's clear.
No, so these are things that I've thought about, and I take a position on stories of the day, whatever it may be. And I then think that there's a sort of rhythm and art to a column where you have to set up the column. You have to explore the debate, and then you must come down, in my opinion, with an opinion. I think we live in an era now where everyone's on social media, everyone's got opinions. They want to be told what to think about stuff. And I think that if I provide any public service now, it's to stimulate proper debate in an era when I'm really concerned that the old-fashioned style of democratic debate is getting crushed. That universities in America, in Britain, and all the places once revered free speech now delight in no platforming people and shutting down any opposing views. And I think that I want to try and constantly challenge that slightly snowflakey way that we're all going and say, look, there's nothing wrong with opinion. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing with people's opinions. And you must be prepared to have a democratic debate about stuff. Otherwise, no one gets anywhere. And I think that, what I like about the columns is they get huge responses, good, bad, and ugly. But they stimulate, encourage free and open debate.
Yeah, I don't agree with every column, every position you take in every column, but I have to say, in the main, we think a lot alike.
Right.
Which is really frightening to me.
Quite disturbing for me, actually.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. But, I mean, you say, I think, what a lot of people are afraid to say. You give a voice to what is not necessarily politically correct, because there's not much that is politically correct anymore. Right. I do a show that deals with a lot of very touchy topics, and it's really hard to do it without offending somebody some way. Even in mental health, because there are different positions on mental health.
Right.
Some people think it's this way, some people think it's that way. It's hard to not offend somebody all the time, but you tend to offend a lot of people a lot of the time.
Well, I'd rather say, look, if you're going to be offended by an opinion, a forthright opinion, then just don't read my columns, because I will offend you. There's going to be somebody somewhere who finds everything I ever write offensive. But they are honestly held opinions, and I do think we're living in an era, as I say, where there's a sort of mob mentality to opinion these days, driven, I think, by social media. Twitter will take a position about something. And, woe betide anybody who dares to say, well, I don't agree. And often I find myself, I don't agree, actually, with the Twitter mob opinion. And the reason for that is Twitter only represents a small fraction of the wider public. I'm sure you know this, is that actually things like President Trump and Brexit in Britain, for example, they happen, and Twitter can't believe it. Twitter's like, how did this happen? Everyone in my Twitter feed told me that they agreed with me. They operate in this weird echo chamber, which often bears no relation to how the wider public are feeling about things. I don't think my positions on stuff are particularly controversial or indeed unpopular. I actually think it's the opposite. I think the Twitter mob is more unpopular than it thinks it is.
It's the silent majority.
Right. Which is big.
It is. It's the silent majority. And I think that my attitude about it, and I'm in my 17th season on Dr. Phil right now, and that's after 5 years on Oprah. So I've been doing this, 22 years. And my thinking is, I made this decision a long time ago. You're going to make somebody mad whatever you do.
Right.
So you might as well do what you want to do. Because somebody's going to be upset, so I might as well make myself happy.
And don't you think the key is to be true to yourself, right?
That's what I mean. I might as well make myself happy.
People may hate me for my opinions. They may disagree with a column I write, something I say on television. But what they can't hate me for is not being authentic or true to myself, because I believe what I write and say. I can have my opinion changed. People can persuade me that I'm wrong, perhaps, or events may happen which change my perspective on something. But when I write these things or say them on television in real time, I mean them. And I will always defend anybody's right to have an honestly held opinion.
Yeah, and that's gone away in America right now.
Right.
It's gone away. You use the term snowflake, and I'm not going to quote this exactly because there are actually two different examples of this, and I get them conflated. So I'm just going to talk about it generally without naming the university or the circumstance. But I believe it was a California university, and I believe it had to do with Ferguson. But a law professor, you may know better than I, but a law professor required part of his class to take an adverse position on an exam. In other words, you need to represent the other side of the case of what you feel, take an adverse position. And it upset those students so much that they said they had to have counseling, and the professor was dismissed.
Which is utterly ridiculous, right?
And at that point, I said, I'm seldom speechless, but at that point, I was absolutely, because I grew up in the litigation arena, my professional career, and oftentimes in mock trials would take one position one day, the other position the next day, and clients would say to me, "You're scary. I mean, you take on the mantle of each side so passionately, you're scary." And I thought, to me, I was just like, okay, now let's go to lunch. And these snowflakes are saying they had to take counseling because they were forced to take a position they didn't believe.
There was a